over 951 cubic feet of granite make up the 11 pieces of the monument. The overall height is 19 feet 3 inches from the surface of the ground to the top of the capstone.
Thank you. Congratulations.
There are slots and holes in the center stone that have astrological significance because they have been cut at precise angles to permit accurate readings of the sun and moon at various times of the year.
Standing on the highest point of Elbert County, the Georgia Guidestones have raised a lot of questions. 4 upright stones more than 16 feet high, with support stones totaling almost 238,000 pounds. And there's a message sandblasted in 12 languages in letters 2 inches tall. The sponsors of the mysterious project are said to be an anonymous group of out-of-state Americans promoting the concept of the conservation of mankind. Granite businessman Joe Findlay was contacted to build the project by a man using the fictitious name of R.C. Christian. Granite City Bank President Wyatt Martin served as intermediary, handled the escrow account for all funds, and says he'll carry the secret of who R.C. Christian is to his grave.
The mere fact that it is a mystery as to the identity of the people will lead others to come and look at the stones and wonder who put those stones there.
In 1979, a mysterious stranger appeared in the sleepy town of Elberton, Georgia, a city that claims the title, the granite capital of the world. The man referred to himself as R.C. Christian. He claimed to represent a small group of concerned Americans who desired to erect a monument for the benefit of mankind. Written upon the granite structure are what are sometimes called the 10 Commandments of the New Age. Some believe they hold a sinister meaning.
I've seen published tracts saying that those 10 guides are the 10 Commandments of the Antichrist.
The most disturbing is the first, to maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. With the world's population at well over 7 billion people, that would mean that many would have to die.
And they interpret that as meaning favoring abortion and or genocide.
It's the only way to get us down to 500 million people is, of course, the extinction of millions upon millions, billions of innocent people.
Since 1980, when the monument was first revealed, clouds of suspicion have lingered over the Georgia Guidestones and those who built it. Conspiracy theories abound, along with accusations of genocide, globalism, and a New World Order agenda. Yet despite the ominous overtones, the defenders of the Guidestones argue that R.C. Christian had no sinister intention when he designed the monument. But who was this mysterious figure, and what was his true intention? A stone plaque written by the author tells us that the name R.C. Christian was just a pseudonym. For more than 30 years, researchers have speculated about the stranger's identity. Suspected candidates have included media mogul Ted Turner and Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard. But now, for the first time in history, the secret identity of R.C. Christian can finally be revealed.
And we're getting ready to conduct an interview with Wyatt Martin, the banker who helped make the financial arrangements for the construction of the Georgia Guidestones. And according to official published reports, may be the only person who knows the true identity of R.C. Christian. Let's go inside.
So, don't ask me that question. I'm not going to divulge who he was or what his occupation was. Because he used the name of R.C. Christian, he told me, because he was a Christian. There's people that, like from the University of Georgia, to show us how to drill the hole. You could look at night and see Polaris, the northernmost star. Because if this worldwide calamity had arisen, you could have gone back and found the Northern Star again. With the sun coming through the slots, when the sun rises on the shortest day of the year, it shines at a different angle through there, so you can tell the shortest day. On the longest day of the year, it'll shine out the other way, and you can therefore establish the calendar again, so you could reestablish the compass and the calendar.
In March of 1980, R.C. Christian's dream would be revealed to all the world. Since that time, the Guidestones, with all their mystery, have inspired a host of apocalyptic ideas. Meanwhile, those who are involved in witchcraft and the occult have seen the monument as a touchstone for the powers of darkness.
I have indeed heard of, especially late at night after midnight, seances and other type, occultic type worship services going on out there. So I've heard of them. I've not witnessed them, and one of the things in all the discussions I've had with members of this community and this church, people here are very reluctant to acknowledge that type thing exists.
While there are no confirmed reports of human sacrifice, the words of R.C. Christian continue to stir the curiosity of critics. What did he intend by his assertion of maintaining a world population at a certain level? While R.C. Christian may not have revealed many details to Wyatt Martin, in 1986, some 6 years after the monument was finished, he would explain the Guidestones further in a book titled Common Sense Renewed, published under the name Robert Christian. The book was reportedly sent to every member of the U.S. Congress, as well as to several thousand political officials and shapers of public opinion throughout the world. In this work, Mr. Christian left little to the imagination. He clearly related the title to revolutionary writer Thomas Paine.
Over 200 years ago, a perceptive Englishman, Tom Paine, summarized his beliefs in a tract entitled Common Sense. He appealed to reason as the proper tool for resolving our problems peacefully. Today, the world is confronted by increasing portents of nuclear war. It is essential, more than ever, before that, we explore every means for rational, non-violent resolution of worldly frictions. Once again, we must look to common sense to find new pathways to peace.
While preaching peace and the concept of reason, his concerns quickly turned to the subject of population control.
We live in a time of great peril. We have controlled disease, but have not regulated our numbers.
R.C. Christian went on to express his concerns as a conservationist and made it clear that the real problems of the environment were the fault of having too many people.
As the world enters the last decade of the 20th century, public concern is being directed to environmental pollution, the destruction of tropical forests, the greenhouse effect, and to impending shortages of many ingredients needed for high material living standards. These problems are only symptoms. The basic cause is obvious to most educated people. It is the human overpopulation that is already upon us.
From his perspective, reproduction could not be left up to the individual. Controlling human numbers would require government oversight.
It is vitally important that each national government have a considered population policy.
Mr. Christian went on to recommend measures currently taken by the Communist government of China. He said,
A few generations of single-child families will make possible dramatic improvements in living standards. The Georgia Guidestones Monument encourages humanity to establish a limit for human numbers. Let us teach our leaders to achieve it.
Does it create sort of a dark cloud over Elberton by having its presence here?
Well, again, I think The short answer is yes. I think there's no question that it does. Some people believe it is very demonic. It's influenced of evil, that the person that helped put it or authorized its being erected was someone who had spurious motives, who was wanting to move the world more to a new world order type of thing, minimize population, one language, that type thing, and they view it as totally heretical and certainly not honoring to God.
In his writings, R.C. Christian described the monument he created.
The monument has been named the Georgia Guidestones. It consists of 4 large upright blocks of granite, each 2 meters wide and 5 meters high. They are arranged to mark the limiting positions of the rising and setting sun in summer and winter. They surround a central stone which is oriented north to south. A channel through this stone is aligned with the celestial pole. On its south face is a sundial marking noontime throughout the year. The capstone is inscribed with an appeal to reason in 4 archaic languages.
The 4 languages on the capstone are Sanskrit, Babylonian cuneiform, Classical Greek, and Egyptian hieroglyphics. The languages are described on the stone plaque nearby, along with a translation. They read simply, "Let these be guidestones to an age of reason." The 8 languages chosen for the 4 main slabs are Russian, Chinese, Arabic, Hebrew, Hindi, Swahili, Spanish, and English.
He had to pick the major languages in the world to do that.
Incredibly, the translations were mostly done through the United Nations.
We had a man who lived in Elberton at that time that was from Pakistan. And he was at one time a member of the ruling group in Pakistan. But people from all over the world would drift in and out to the big parties that he had there. And one weekend, the ambassador to the UN from Pakistan came and spent the weekend with him, and he called me and he said, maybe if you talk with him, you could get him to get these translations you need, because I had to ask him if he could translate them, and he didn't know all the languages. And I went up to his house and met the ambassador, and he agreed he'd get the translations done at the UN for me, and we got them from the UN.
So the translations came directly from the United Nations?
From the people there. They translated the English over. That we had a young Chinese person who lived in Elberton that translated the Chinese for me. Wow. The rest of them came out of from people at the UN.
The 10 commands or guides that were provided by R.C. Christian read as follows.
Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Unite humanity with a living new language. Rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Avoid petty laws and useless officials. Balance personal rights with social duties. Prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. Be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature. Leave room for nature.
Because of its controversial message, the Georgia Guidestones have attracted visitors from all over the world. Yet many have wondered, where did the author get the inspiration for these 10 guides. What follows is from a strange document that we found among the records. The wording of it does not read like the other writings of Mr. Christian and seems to have been composed by someone else, perhaps another member of the anonymous group behind the guidestones. The important parts of it read as follows.
To whomever comes upon this presenting, contained herein are keys that have been awaited to be placed here in proper sequencing and in proper order, to announce the return and the activation of those events of prophecy that signal these events. Those who have guarded this great mystery and who have guarded the evolution of the human species itself are returning. It has begun. This monument, known as the Georgia Guidestones, shall find threads unto the revelation of its mystery in the name R.C. Christian, otherwise known unto that contingency that is responsible for the erection of this monument as Christian Rosencrantz, 1378 to 1484. This presentation of keys upon the finding of it is to be delivered to the Elberton Star. The Elberton Star is to deliver it to the Atlanta Rosicrucian Society.
The document clearly associates the name R.C. Christian with the mythical figure of Christian Rosencrantz, who is alleged to have founded a secret society known as the Rosicrucians. The initials R.C. are often used by the members of the order in reference to their legendary founder, who most historians seem to believe was really the Count of Saint Germain, a famous alchemist and philosopher. The Rosicrucians typically trace their beliefs back to ancient Egypt and combine the mysteries of the pagan gods, symbolized by the rose, with Christianity, which is symbolized by the cross. The Rosicrucians are sometimes called the most secret of the secret societies, and their members traditionally remain anonymous. Was R.C. Christian a Rosicrucian? Could this explain why he chose to maintain a secret identity? We spoke with the Elberton Star newspaper, who told us they know nothing about the message and have never been given any mysterious keys. We also contacted the leaders of the Atlanta Rosicrucian Society, who declined to provide any official comment. Yet the Rosicrucian connection links the Guidestones back to Freemasonry. The 18th degree of Scottish Rite Masonry is known as the Knight Rose Croix, or Rose and Cross. Some believe the philosophies of these two groups are nearly identical and promote confidence in man rather than trust and faith in God.
There are clearly non-biblical concepts within the theology of Freemasonry, and clearly those connections can be seen to the Guidestones. Similar ideas of a utopianism that goodness can be had if we'll all just see things the same way. When you look at the Guidestones, there are a lot of isms that are there. And the biggest ism that I see is secularism, that mankind has the solutions to the problems of the world.
There is no question that R.C. Christian believed his Guidestones would provide solutions for mankind and usher in a kind of golden age. In his writings, he said,
I am the originator of the Georgia Guidestones and the sole author of its inscriptions. Stonehenge and other vestiges of ancient thought arouse our curiosity but carry no message for human guidance. The Guidestones have been erected to convey certain ideas across time to others. We hope that these silent stones and their inscriptions will merit a degree of approval and acceptance down the centuries, and by their silent persistence hasten in small ways the dawning of an age of reason.
Apparently, the cost of the project was far greater than Mr. Christian anticipated. In a letter to Wyatt Martin, he said,
Dear Mr. Martin,
I have received your letter giving price estimates for our proposed monument. Naturally, I am quite disappointed that the total figure is so much greater than the estimates given me at the time of my visit to Elberton. Mr. Fenley originally guesstimated a total cost of $35,000 to $40,000 erected. I will now have to make some changes. I have eliminated the pyramidal top because of costs. I believe any builder should be able to build the foundation alone for less than $2,000. I was once a concrete worker myself.
Among the papers from Coggins Industries is another drawing showing the proposed outer stone circle. This diagram also includes the mention of a sunstone for the Atlanta Masons. However, the money was never raised for the additional stones. This interview was recorded in March of 2010, which would mean that the phone call from Mr. Christian took place about 2003. After the guidestones were completed, the mysterious stranger continued his correspondence with Wyatt Martin, who revealed to us that the man who called himself R.C. Christian had passed away some years before.
His son called me a few months ago and told me that his father had passed away several years ago. His father and mother, he said, were both deceased now.
It is well known that Wyatt Martin is committed to taking the secret of R.C. Christian to his grave. But could there be any available clues to who he was without getting a direct answer from Mr. Martin? In 2009, a Wired magazine article reported that inside Mr. Martin's garage was the hard-sided case of an IBM computer, stuffed with every document connected to the guidestones. Is it possible that Wyatt Martin retained possession of this computer case?
Okay, so they burned Fendley's stuff, but not necessarily your stuff.
And he told, Mr. Christian told me to destroy mine.
Oh, I assume is that
That is a letter right there from Mr. R.C. Christian.
You're kidding.
Where's this?
This one right here. Just show him. Here's the.
And so that is from Mr. R.C. Christian himself.
That's correct.
That's amazing.
That's his writing.
Yeah.
It's not mine.
Oh, I'll pick that up.
Oh, I see.
See.
Lock the town out there. You're doing this movie, I may have to burn Smithsonian Magazine.
Hey, while you're looking at that, I gotta get a. It's the doors. I gotta get a drink of drink.
Right here.
Without revealing anything directly to us, the paperwork in Wyatt Martin's IBM computer case provided powerful clues. The first was the name of a Mr. Merriman, who was somehow associated with R.C. Christian. The next was the mailing address at 730 Raywood Drive in Fort Dodge, Iowa. Could this be the address of Mr. Merriman? And could Merriman have been the true name of R.C. Christian? We contacted the publisher of the book, Common Sense Renewed, at Stoyles Graphic Services in Lake Mills, Iowa. We were told that the book had been published by a Mr. Robert Merriman, pictured here on the far right. His obituary shows that he died in 1992, 12 years after the guidestones were completed. Was this the face of R.C. Christian? Harris Hansi was a friend of Robert Merriman's. Both men served during World War II and worked together in the publishing industry.
He was a super guy and well known and well respected. And so, yes, I knew Bob Merriman, but not that well. He was, but I knew him as a gentleman and just one smart guy. He knew what was going on.
We spoke to Mr. Hansi about the book, Common Sense Renewed, and he confirmed for us that it was indeed published by Robert Merriman.
How certain are you that he was the author of it?
I am very certain. I think I always believed that.
Our next clue is the address found on one of the envelopes in Wyatt Martin's IBM computer case. 730 Raywood Drive in Fort Dodge, Iowa. Fort Dodge was an old fort that dates back to 1850.
It was originally named Fort Clark, but they discovered there was another Fort Clark that existed, and so the name was changed to Fort Dodge in honor of Senator Henry Dodge from the state of Wisconsin.
Fort Dodge is also famous for the Cardiff Giant, one of the great hoaxes of the 19th century. While investigating the address at Raywood Drive, we discovered that this was not the home of Robert Merriman. Also, Merriman died in 1992, 11 years before the phone call described by Joe Fenley Jr. and 6 years before the letter sent to Wyatt Martin in 1998. Because of this, Merriman could not have been the stranger who came to Elberton, but would have likely known who he was. After further investigation, we learned that 730 Raywood Drive was once owned by a well-respected physician named Dr. Herbert H. Kirsten. Dr. Kirsten was also an inventor who owned more than 10 patents registered with the U.S. government. This patent for a rotary valve engine shows the inventor Herbert H. Kirsten at 730 Raywood Drive in April of 1979, just 2 months before R.C. Christian first met with Wyatt Martin. Furthermore, a campaign donation in support of Doug Gross for governor in 2002 again lists Herbert H. Kirsten at the same address on Raywood Drive. This means that Dr. Kirsten continued at this address during the whole time that the Guidestones were designed and built. And he was at this address when the letters were sent to Wyatt Martin. One of Kirsten's patents included an invention for a form and facing device for concrete.
I was once a concrete worker myself.
We also learned that Dr. Kirsten died in 2005, which would fit with a timeline given by Joe Fenley Jr., who claimed Mr. Christian called his father in 2003, and also by Wyatt Martin, who revealed that the stranger had died after the year 2000.
And can you say if it was after the year 2000?
Yes, it was after the year 2000.
In his letter to Wyatt Martin, Mr. Christian revealed that he was 78 years old in the year 1998.
I'm old enough, 78, to remember the days of the Dust Bowl.
This would mean that R.C. Christian would have been born in the year 1920. Could this have been the same year that Dr. Kirsten was born? We went to his grave in Fort Dodge to find out. The caretaker was a lifelong resident of Fort Dodge and was very familiar with the Kirsten family. Dr. Kirsten came from a long line of physicians that maintained a medical practice in the city for 74 years.
They're great people, all the Kirstens.
The members of the Kirsten family share a plot in the local cemetery.
Well, now I noticed there's red, white, and blue roses.
A family member would have put that out for him.
As we suspected, Dr. Kirsten was born in the year 1920. This means his age was identical to the person who called himself R.C. Christian. But he left yet another clue on his gravestone. He wished to be remembered as both a physician and a conservationist.
Leave room for nature. Leave room for nature.
We also learned that the name Kirsten is an archaic form of the word Christian. Hence, Mr. Kirsten literally means Mr. Christian. Is it possible that Dr. Kirsten worked with Robert Merriman, and that both men were part of the small group of Americans responsible for the Georgia Guidestones? When it came time to publish their book, did the authors combine the first name of Mr. Merriman with the last name of Mr. Kirsten? so that Robert Kirsten would become Robert Christian. Yet it remains to be seen whether or not these two men even knew each other. To find out, we met with a nephew of Mr. Merriman, a well-known figure in Fort Dodge named Chief Judge Kurt Wilkie.
What is your relationship to Robert M. Merriman?
He was my uncle. He was actually married to my mother's sister.
Judge Wilkie also confirmed that he knew Dr. Herbert H. Kirsten.
I knew him just very, very slightly. I knew who he was. He had a great reputation here in Fort Dodge. He was a physician.
And we've tried to find information to show how they might have known each other. Of course, they're two prominent citizens. What would lead you to believe that they may have known each other?
Oh, yeah, I know that they knew each other. For example, at Christmas time, they would have, my aunt and uncle would have social gatherings at their house, and Dr. Kirsten would be there. So I knew that they were friends.
During our interview, we shared with Judge Wilkie what we had learned about the involvement of his uncle and Dr. Kirsten with the Georgia Guidestones.
My uncle was a very intelligent man, a very studious man. So being told this, it's not a real surprise. From what your investigation was, that Dr. Kirsten had some ideas about working on this project down in Georgia, and that he might have wanted to maintain some secrecy about his involvement. It doesn't surprise me in the least that if he went to Bob Merriman and asked him to somehow assist with whatever it was and to keep it quiet.
Judge Wilkie confirmed for us that Kirsten and Merriman knew each other. Yet the most shocking information would be revealed in the public library at Fort Dodge at our meeting with two local historians, Professor Roger Natty and Mr. William Sales Doane. They remembered Robert Merriman and his family legacy in the publishing industry.
His father was a publisher here prior to Bob, and he wasn't, he didn't get involved really in politics.
They also remembered Dr. Kirsten and that the two men had worked together on a project in Fort Dodge.
Dr. Kirsten decided he was an architect, and he had a little scale model, and the Great Flag was a co-production of Mr. Merriman.
Mr. Doane's description of how Dr. Kirsten created a small-scale model reminded us of the model of the Guidestones presented to Joe Fendley. We shared with Professor Natty and Mr. Doane what we had learned about Kirsten and Merriman's relationship to the Georgia Guidestones and the publication of the book Common Sense Renewed.
I have a copy of the Library of Congress catalog record, and it shows the copyright also to Graphic Publishing Company, which was Robert Merriman's company.
I'm astonished.
Professor Natty shared with us some additional records in the Fort Dodge Library. One of them contained a brief biography of Dr. Kirsten that clearly showed his beliefs were identical to those of R.C. Christian.
From 1990 from Herbert Kirsten, it says, "The number one world health problem is the population explosion," Kirsten believes. "Controlling population is the most important problem confronting humanity," he said. "Our present world population of 5 billion is expected to double in 20 years. We are already polluting the world and using up much of our resources. We should talk about controlling human population rather than controlling acid rain. The solution involves education and birth control in all countries," he said.
But was he then well known for his views about population control?
I think fairly well. Shockley is the name that I couldn't think of before. Nobel Prize winner.
Shockley is a reference to Dr. William Shockley, the Nobel Prize-winning physicist who invented the transistor. In the 1970s, Dr. Shockley was known for his belief that blacks were genetically inferior to whites, and that those with an IQ of less than 100 should be paid to undergo sterilization. Despite his scientific achievements, Shockley's racial views made him highly unpopular.
And Dr. Kirsten knew Shockley and said that Kirsten, and he used to circulate this in the country club, which is how I heard about it, he had decided he would create some kind of measurement that would prove once and for all that only white people were, especially Northern Europeans, were the superior race. And this was well known around Fort Dodge.
So would it be accurate to say that Mr. Kirsten was a white supremacist?
Racist to his fingertips. When he did this at the country club, a number of people were deeply offended by what he was saying.
Dr. Kirsten had even written a letter to a Florida newspaper expressing his views in favor of David Duke, a well-known controversial figure and former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan.
Duke voices many beliefs held by reasonable Americans. It is unfortunate that more acceptable public figures are not pushing similar views. So, now David Duke, the one we're talking about, is the gentleman who was the Grand Wizard of the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan.
And also an American Nazi, and he paraded around with a swastika armband and a Nazi uniform. And there are photographs of it.
In his autobiography, David Duke referred to William Shockley as his friend. At one point, Mr. Doan even wondered if Dr. Shockley had been a member of the small group of Americans behind the Guidestones.
And I knew that Dr. Kirsten and Shockley were friends. I mean, he did not make it a secret. He was proud of it.
The concept of an age of reason, as envisioned by Thomas Paine, would be a frightening prospect for humanity. A world devoid of Christian charity would likely be a world that would usher in another Holocaust.